So welcome to this second edition. They say save the best till last. We've kind of rehearsed it with people. It was kind of like just dress rehearsal. I was making a lot of it up, but the real value is in this session with you guys. So I'm very happy to have you joining me for this today. Okay, so this is going to be very intense. We have about 90 minutes, but the real value will come afterwards in what you do because you've been here now. So to help with that, at the end, I've got a resource pack that I'll share to help you really take action. It's got exercises, it's got follow-up guides. I'm going to make reference to a couple of things in the discussion today, but actually doing the work is where the change will come. We'll be doing a few start exercises though, so wave your pen and paper in the air right now, or if you haven't got one to hand, quietly go and fetch yours, and I won't watch, I promise. Okay. So with that in mind, if there is one thing that I want you to take from this session, it is the following. Your point of view does not matter. We constantly make the mistake of telling our story from our own point of view. And I'm going to tell you to stop doing that because no one cares. No one cares about your proudest achievement, about the work that you've done, unless you can put it into the context of where you're going. So what really matters is the point of view of your future colleagues or collaborators, or potentially, for some of you on this call, co-founders. So we're going to double down on this potentially harsh truth a little bit later in the discussion today. And with a very deep sense of irony, here is the boring personal background, or perhaps more importantly, the credibility story in no more than 90 seconds. Okay, deep breath in. I have seen this from both sides. I have done business school and management consulting, where I worked for Unilever and Google and Coca-Cola and slightly awkwardly Shell. And then I led an analytics startup through to exit and advised climate tech companies on their go-to-market strategy. And across all of this, I've employed hundreds of talented people in the past few years, and more recently helped hundreds more find their niche, make your contribution, and make your impact. So I've also watched in dismay as people waste hours looking in the wrong place, spending time on things that don't matter, spinning in circles, feeling totally overwhelmed. The endless job board scrolling, the spray and pray applications, the late nights ending with 30 browser tabs open, but no forward progress. And on the other side, I've taken several career breaks myself. I've paused to be a full-time father, to travel, and bluntly, to overcome horrific burnout. But each time I came back into a stronger position than I left, because I focused my efforts on the areas most likely to give results. And I want to share some of that with you today, because after my own climate epiphany, this is the biggest lever that I can pull, and it is why I do what I do today, helping smart, capable professionals like you find your niche and make a planet positive impact. So here it is. It is a sprint through almost everything you need to do to go from overwhelmed to confident, to nail down your doubts, to overcome the overwhelm, and to make meaningful steps towards your climate career. We have a lot to cover. It is broadly split into two parts. There is the exploring and there is the applying. And so in the comments, just give me a sense of where you are in that journey. I'm going to come back to asking that very specifically in a game show style quiz in a moment. But despite all of that content, to be clear from the outset that this workshop will also feature absolutely no resume help. Because change will not come from changing your CV. It will come from changing your calendar. And bluntly, again, you're all smart, capable, intelligent people that can probably find 1,000 9 hot tips to make your CV stand out, because you all know how to use Google or ChatGPT. So why am I so dismissive of the typical job scrolling, code application, CV posting approach? The answer to that is it simply comes down to the numbers. There are bad odds on this side. Just 2% of applications make an interview, and yet 74% of seekers are starting with this approach. That is terrible odds. That is 3/4 of people chasing 2% of the interview invitations. Meanwhile, on the more positive side, on the good odds, 2/3 of jobs come from what David Burkus calls your loose connections. And the pool of jobs that you won't find by looking on job boards may account for 70% of the opportunities, according to Career Horizons. Okay, so with that intro and context in place, we're going to do several live exercises in this session, but I kind of want to make sure that I am addressing the most important or most popular area. So just like a 1980s game show, you get to decide where we go or choose your own adventure if you're slightly more into the sci-fi D&D world. So to get the most value from this session, tell me where you feel most stuck. In the comments, throw an A or a B. And I'm going to do this, a mix of both. I can't cheating because I'm going back. Both. A, B, A, B, 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 B. Okay, I'm gonna go with B and a little bit of A. B plus transforming minus good. Okay, all right, got it. All right, we're gonna lean more towards the B's, which means that basically I'm gonna voice over and cover some of the exercise stuff for the A's. But irrespective of where you are, the most important question that I see people get wrong all of the time is the first one, which is where do I even start? And we start, controversially, by not looking at jobs. We start at the start. So this comes up in every conversation I have with mid-career professionals stepping into sustainability work. Even if some of you are new to this field and wondering like how your existing experience transfers, great, I'm here for that. But others already working into sustainability, but wanting to take a more operational or more strategic role, still face the same problem. It's that the roles show up in conversations and in networks. So it's not just about finding the right role, it's about becoming someone who is findable. And in order to do that and stay motivated, we need a plan. This is kind of a long-term project, but we need some concrete steps to follow that are action-based and are focusing our time where we can expect the best results. So with that in mind, let's start with how to find what you're looking for. And the reason why this is important is you have to be sure. So there are 3 steps, 3 phases. They are cumulative and they critically start with the clarity of your criteria, followed by building a filter of how to know you've found what you're looking for and using that to guide your exploration of the landscape in novel ways. To make this even simpler, you can think of this as the 3 F's. They are filter, funnel, and focus. And we're going to take a short look at each of those 3. So, question 1, how will you know you've found what you're looking for? I ask all of my clients this in our first session, and you'd be surprised at how many people have no idea or have never really thought about it, even though they could give me a list of job titles that they are looking for or applying for. Most people start with something like, I'll be happy in the work, and I'll feel like I'm making an important impact. They often start with a vague sense of better than what I'm doing now that they can only really be sure of once they're in the role. Ultimately, you have to narrow your focus. You have to be able to go after just one thing. Because when you need to put 5 hours into a single application, when you need to be able to address the fear of missing out on the other side of all the other options, you really need to know that this is the job that you want. Because if you don't and you're not doing that, somebody else is. The market is tough. So get clear to get ahead. It also means that you're going to have to decide. So I'm married into a Greek family. My Greek partner enjoys giving me the ancient Greek or occasionally Latin origins of English words. And recently she pointed out that decide has the same root as insecticide, homicide, pesticide. To decide isn't to choose one. To decide, like the 3 words above, means to kill. It means to kill off the alternatives, to kill off the other ideas, to take things which distract us and move us away. We have to kill off the other ideas and the other options to give us what is left, that single-minded focus in one sector for one role. So how do we decide? We can only decide when we know the criteria. The criteria you can think of as a funnel like this, and there are 4 levels to this funnel. There are the fundamentals, your strengths, your values, and your sense of self. Very briefly, the fundamentals are all the things that you think of when you think about a job. Is there travel? Is it a big company? Is it a small company? Is there a lot of money? Is there a little bit of money? What about the life design? Is it a big commute or a small commute? That kind of the shape of work is what we're talking about when we talk about fundamentals. It's kind of the stuff that you would use to describe to somebody else your new job. Like, oh, I've got a new job. Great, where is it? Is the pay good? Those sort of things. They're easy questions to ask, but not always easy questions to answer. So we're going to have a quick look at some of the questions and an approach to get into like figuring out what your fundamentals are. Underneath your fundamentals are your strengths. I do not mean your skills, because you can learn new skills and they're transient and they're replaceable. But your character strengths typically formed by the time we are in our late teens. And they are the character traits which fundamentally make you who you are. So that phrase of do things which play to your strengths is really important, because when you do, you have the unfair advantage of doing something that you find easy that other people find hard. It's also a lot more likely that you'd enjoy it, and therefore you're going to find a greater degree of alignment and you're going to have more motivation to chase it down. Values is a horrible word. It's been absolutely ruined by the early to mid noughties push from all the corporates to have a value statement. Like, well, we sell fast food, but we need a value statement. The challenge is that if you look at values assessments and you do one on a Monday morning and it's rainy and you've had a big weekend and you're tired, and you do another one on a Friday afternoon and it's sunny and you're looking forward to the weekend, you kind of get 2 different answers. But there is enough overlap in the middle. There is enough persistency of your values. And if you think of values assessments a little bit like fortune cookies, it doesn't really matter what the actual answer is. What matters is what resonates and how you respond to what you're given. So clarity around your values is essential, not just because of the shape of the alignment and whether it's important to you or not, but it's for things like being able to use values as a decision criteria. For example, if you value meritocracy and equality, or you value reward for work done, you're far more likely to find a meritocratic culture in small startups, because everyone has to pull together to make it work. Everyone has to work the weekend because the client has changed their mind. We're all in it together and we all win together. So if that is one of your values, you can start to say, I'm probably going to find more alignment in a smaller organization. If you value that slightly more individual reward for work done, then you could think of something like consultancy, which is very much more of a steeper up or out mentality. And even if you're leading a team, it still will be judged on you and your performance as you drag it from your team or build it with your team. So you can use values as a criteria to say, you know what, I probably want to be looking more in this space than in that space, and start to kill off the alternatives. And at the bottom is perhaps the most important, the most interesting, but also the hardest to get to. That is your sense of identity and your sense of self. Now, I love working in this space. I come from the Jungian school of psychology. We are many selves competing for dominance, a little bit like if you've seen the film Inside Out. You kind of know what I'm talking about. All these different voices, different parts of ourselves, all bubbling and fighting for control on the dashboard. The useful thing of being able to identify and name and be able to have a dialogue with your many selves is that it gives you both a positive opportunity and a challenging opportunity. What I mean by that is, on the inside, you might have a nurturing Jane and an analytical Jane and a protective Jane, as well as, which obviously it would be quite weird if your name isn't Jane, but I'm looking at Jane right now, and that's why, and also my sister's called Jane, which is why your name popped into my head. You also have the imposter Jane and the self-saboteur Jane, etc. So in doing this exercise, you get to find all of these characters which are part of you that you can ask and say, do I want to spend more time being the protective, nurturing Jane, or the analytical, rational Jane, or the creative, artistic Jane? And so you can use that to say, well, if I'm just asking that nurturing, protective Jane, which of these ideas or potential pieces of work do I want to do? Then you can get a real immediate sense of whether that kind of work is right for you or not. And at the same time, because you've now identified all those parts of all those Janes that are going to bring resistance, the imposter syndrome, the self-saboteur, you could have the similar conversation when you hear that voice come and say, yeah, but you can't do that because you've not really done much of it. Like, well, why is that? Whose voice is that? Well, that is the imposter Jane. And you can have a discussion with imposter Jane to help shape. Well, what does imposter Jane need to hear right now in order for us to move forward in a manner which is in our collective best interest? So with that in mind, you're building the funnel. So you're building the filter with the criteria. What we're going to do is in the resource pack, which we'll share after this call, there is an exercise which focuses down on these individual selves. It's a worksheet, it'll take about an hour, and you get to sort of play with the different sides of yourself, etc. And then you can see how useful it is in both defining your criteria and identifying your future obstacles. Okay, but before we get to that, we're going to talk very quickly about the fundamentals. Mainly because I said there's a couple of interactive pieces. This is going to be the first one. This is where you need your pen and paper. So the funny thing is about people in general, and this is almost universally true, irrespective of what Instagram memes tell us, is that the negative pathway is easier to find. And what I mean by that is, if you ask someone to name 5 bad things that happened this week, is a lot easier. It's a lot easier access than tell me 5 positive things. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that shortcut, that mental behavioral shortcut, and we're going to start with a question. Can you wave or give us an emoticon or something to say you are ready with a pen and paper? Because we're going to do 3 questions, 2 minutes each. And Jane, you're still on my screen. Give us a wave. Sorry, I'm not picking on you. Maybe I should choose someone else. Thank you, Tiffany. Got a thumbs up. All right, that's it. Okay. How can I randomize who I can see? Ready with pen and paper. Okay. Yes, pen. All right. Okay. So what I want you to do is I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, I want you to list every negative thing that has happened to you in your entire career. Happened to you or circumstances that you've not enjoyed. That might be things like, I hated it when I had a long commute. I had an absolute arsehole of a boss. I felt that the work I did was pointless. I had to travel so much for work that it disrupted my family life, etc., etc. Now I am going to set the timer. This should be fairly easy to do. I don't mean set the timer because I'm having to operate technology, which means it's not easy to do. There we go. Go. All right. What I am going to do is I'm going to turn my camera off and my mute myself so that you don't feel like someone's watching over your shoulder, especially for you, Jane, because I kind of was earlier. Okay, so I'm going to do that and I will be back online in 2 minutes time. Okay, final few seconds. Finish your thought. Okay. Some people find that very easy. Some people get stuck after the first couple. This is a starter exercise. Everything that we do in this conversation, back it up by doing the work afterwards. And in the resource pack, there is guided steps for a lot of these exercises as well. Okay, so you've done the must not have. So now we're going to flip that and say, well, if it was a long commute, the obvious implication is that you must have a short commute this time, or that your work needs to be recognized. And as you get into the slightly more vague sort of like, well, I didn't feel like I could do anything that made a difference, how would you know that it would make a difference? So rather than just saying like, oh, I need to feel like it make an impact, think about how you can translate that into an, how can you see it? What degree of proximity to impact do you need? So, for example, if you have the idea of wanting to work in sustainable finance, your ability to see the impact of what you're doing is very limited. At one end, let's say, there is finance or regulatory changes. It takes a very long time. It's very abstract and intellectual. At the other end, there is standing and planting mangroves. Because at the end of each day, you can look at the mangrove you planted and go, I did that. There is impact. So somewhere in between. So get a sense of how important transparency or proximity to impact is for you, as an example. And I am setting the clock. And what we're trying to do here is just the reverses of all the negative things that you've written in as much detail as you can in the time available. Thank you very much. That was entirely on mute. We've been doing these sort of things basically since the pandemic, right? 5 years, and I still do things like chat away to myself on mute. So thank you for the note. All right, so finish that up. You should have a few sort of black and white mirror image approach and a list of positive attributes that you're going to use as criteria to help kill off the things that don't have that. Now we're going to add in 2 minutes of anything you think we might have missed. And this is where you get to consider things like mission fit or type of team or pace of work or degree of flexibility or type of impact or the part of you that the role speaks to, etc. This is the picture a future version of you making the contribution in the niche that you want to work in. And if you don't know what that is, that's fine, because we're going with the criteria that you're going to use to find it. So stick with mission fit, type of team, organization, any of those other fundamental shape of work kind of questions, and go at that. We've got 2 minutes. Okay. So we're going to draw that one to a close. You should have like a starter on the fundamentals. I mean, look, you're not going to be able to nail that in a 10-minute exercise. So go back and repeat that and let it marinate. Think about what comes up in the next couple of days. These are the, I guess, fairly easy-ish external logistical variables. At the other end of the spectrum, at the bottom of our filter, we have this question of self. Interesting. Currently, my slides have stopped working. This could be an issue. Okay. Talk amongst yourselves and play yourself some incidental music whilst I restart my slide software. Well, I can give you a running commentary as well. Not just my slide software, everything has stopped.
At least you're still here.
Well, I'm only here in body now because my mind is figuring out how to do this. Okay, all right, slides are working. Bring back onto share. Can now see screen. Yeah. Yes.
All right, we're in action.
Smooth. Yeah. Seamless. Like it didn't even happen. All right. So we've done the fundamentals, top of the funnel. At the other end is that deep inside set of questions. And this is probably my all-time favorite place to work, as I've already described. It helps us to understand who we are and to honor and manage that in relation to the work we want to do. I've already mentioned that it doubles as a great way to see or plan for some of the obstacles which will come up in your journey. There's exercise in the resource pack which is coming. Okay, so quick recap. We've got our filter. Now we need to add into the top with our funnel. So the problem that we face here is poor cognitive availability, because it's likely that your dream role is something that you don't even know about yet. And the reason I say that is because making a positive impact is so wide and so broad. There's so many different solutions to this problem that the likelihood of knowing them all already is probably quite small. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pincer approach. We're going to do outside in, then inside out. We're going to take a look at the first one first. That inside question is about finding your cause, because people don't do things because they think they should. The rational part of our brain just isn't powerful enough to make us stick to the diet, go to the gym, keep exercising. We do these things because of what the outcome means to us emotionally. And it's the same with meaningful work. Bluntly, You have to care for it to have meaning for you. The easiest way to tap into that, sadly, again, is via this negative pathway. Now, we're going to move through this very quickly because we're going to get into the how do you actually get the job because of the everyone or the majority of people voting B. There are prompts and guides to this in the resource pack. But as an explainer, the easiest way to get into this is to start by thinking what makes you angry. It's that 50,000 point view of what makes you angry and why. Who is impacted? What is it about this that riles you up? Maybe somebody you know personally is impacted by this, or yourself. What would it feel like to see them suffer? Is it the horrific waste and pollution caused by single-use plastics? If it is, fine, but then why? Is it the ocean impact? Is it the wastefulness of it? Is it the injustice of the people disproportionately impacted by it? Is it the energy wasted in producing it? You really need to get into the why that is the case. Once you've got the why, you can start to think about, okay, this is what makes me angry. What kind of solutions exist? Is there something in the supply chain? Is it consumer attitudes that need to change? Is it governmental policy and regulation? Is it poor corporate responsibility? There's no wrong answers to this, but you need to be able to just let it flow. And this is where I'm talking about the cognitive availability issue. So our friends over at Climate Drift have done a great job and all the hard work to list out 220 solutions which are currently addressing a lot of these problems and taking time to study and reflect on each of the branches around this map. Obviously, it's bigger than this. Will give you a start point to research some of those solutions that immediately speak to you. It's broadly arranged into 6 categories, such as energy, transport, food, finance, something and something, my 2 favorites. But it goes all the way down to very specific areas for you to get involved in and look into. Once you've got a sense of what makes you angry and why, and that cause, and a potential set of solutions, you can then do things like, well, take this problem, think about your current skills or experience, and build a hypothesis. The hypothesis is what we need to get to, because we're going to take this question of, well, maybe it's something in this space that is the thing that I want to do. It is impossible to get the answer correct because there are too many assumptions involved in doing so. So rather than looking for, I want a job at the end of it, what we're looking for is bringing our hypothesis, and then we use the filter to drop our ideas into the top and then shake it through, see what comes out. Now, immediately the problem is we don't know enough about, what was the idea that I came up with? We don't know enough about roles in circular packaging startups. So we need to, rather than setting out and go, right, I'm going to do a master's in the circular economy or take a big degree or invest a lot of time and money, we need the shortest possible route to finding out enough about that particular area that enables us to answer the question if you're going to pivot or persevere. So we can borrow some design thinking here, and we're going to rapid prototype the answer. This is what you do when you don't have enough information to make a viable decision. So you can climb the commitment ladder. You cannot figure this out by sitting and figuring it out because it's procrastinating to do more planning, to do more LinkedIn scrolling, to go job board hunting. What we need to do, and apologies to anybody who has any command over the Japanese language, is we need to genchi genbutsu, which means 10 points if anyone can write down what that means in the comments. It means go see for yourself. So go see for yourself means you need direct experience, or at the very least, secondhand experience to discuss. You cannot spend your time reading more PDFs and articles and spending more time online. So go and find 5 people who are either in the sector or doing the type of work that has come out of your hypothesis, and have 5 informational conversations. Build a test. It can be very small, but it will increase in commitment as you go deeper. It might start with 5 coffee conversations, then it might be a conference day or a short course or team shadowing or project engagement or offering some freelance involvement. possibly even a secondment in your current organization to do something different. The point is that each test, each loop around this question of build, test, learn, you're evaluating not, is this going to be my future job? You're evaluating, am I prepared to spend my time on the next incremental step of this ladder? You're asking, am I going to pivot or persevere based on what I now know, the criteria that I have, and what I've just found out? Now, the reason why this approach is so important isn't because it will help you find your niche and what you want to do. It's because as you do this, you are already building your network and you're already leaving this breadcrumb trail of proof points. Because once you've had 5 conversations and you've learned from those interviews, you can then synthesize that and post about it on LinkedIn or online, or at least put it out there. So you're increasing the speed at which you learn, you're building your network, the 5 people you just had a conversation with, and you're giving yourself to leave these proof points. And the value of that will become self-evident when we start talking about how to get the job that you want. As you can see, it is not by applying. Okay. In the how to get you job you want section, there are 3 things: credibility, visibility, and network. Before we get into that, I am going to ask in the comments, how are we all feeling? Are we good? About halfway through? Do we want to take a 2-minute stretch? Actually, that's a rhetorical question. We're going to do a 2-minute stretch. All right. I have a standing up and down desk like this. And although you can't tell, I'm about to stand up and I'm going to move my desk into the standing position. And I'm going to ask everybody to stand up as well. Now, I can't actually see anybody except Daria, who's on video. Okay. All right. I'm going to do hands up to the ceiling and wiggle your fingers. Take a deep breath in. Oh, and a deep breath out. And we're going to do that one more time. Deep breath in, wiggle your fingers at the sky. And then shake it all out to the bottom. All right. So, how to get the job you want. Credibility, visibility, network. And we have perfectly 45 minutes. Credibility. Let's talk about credibility, because this is one of the biggest blockers that I see in career transitions. Oh, out of breath. Oh my goodness, my aerobic fitness needs some work. So whether you are shifting into sustainability for the first time or trying to move into a more strategic or impactful role, there is often this internal voice that is saying, am I good enough for this? And at the same time, there's this external question from the hiring managers, collaborators, or funders, and they're all saying, why should we trust this person with the work? So there's this credibility gap. It doesn't mean that you lack the skills. It usually just means that your story isn't landing. And the biggest mistake that I see over and over and over again is failing to see the problem that needs solving. So the best piece of advice I was ever given in my own career was don't make them think. Don't give your potential colleagues or collaborators or co-founders a puzzle to solve. Show them that you get their problem. A climate tech founder who just made their Series A raise is lying awake at night, worrying about telling the compelling story of operational efficiency or a cost of sales improvements, not how to hire a skill set. So when you turn up and you talk about the skills that you've got, that person, she just will not care. She's not listening for that. What she wants is someone saying, I understand the problem. I understand the pressure of your investors looking at the metrics around cost of sales improvements. You don't necessarily have to have the answer, but if you can clearly describe the problem that your hiring decision maker has, you will 9 times out of 10 get the opportunity to solve it. So, how can you do that? The answer is give them the low cognitive effort to see your value. And you do that with three things: proof, positioning, and clarity. Proof is something that shows you can actually do the work. It doesn't have to be huge, it just has to be real. The positioning is how you talk about your past, so it makes sense in the context of the problem. And the clarity is, do people walk away from your profile, your intro, your post, knowing what you're about? And this is critical, the acid test for this is not just they know what you're about, but they are able to explain it to somebody else. Because when that is true, the power and exponential growth of your network is phenomenal, because then other people can advocate for you. So once those three things are working together, your credibility stops being a question and starts becoming the answer. But how do we do this? Well, we show, we don't tell. You don't need permission to prove your value. I'm going to say that again because so many of my clients get this wrong. You do not need permission to prove your value, and you don't always need qualifications. You can do a proof project, something like a 2-week solo project tackling a real sustainability problem. Or you could volunteer with a local or virtual initiative and share what you learned. You could write up a case study on the previous piece of work that you've done, but frame it through a climate lens. You could take a seat on as a trustee on a board and then help them with their work from an easy to access opportunity. You could share a teardown or a model or resource on LinkedIn and then say, and here's what I do differently. So here are two great real life examples, people that I've worked with. I worked with a UX designer who took an existing solar installations company's website, screen grabbed their design, and then rebuilt it, cut it up, rebuilt it to show how she would improve it from a conversion rate optimization standpoint. She then went on to do this for a number of organizations and created a portfolio of demonstrable proof showing that she could solve the issues of low conversions. Because in that startup world, the low conversion is the problem. And so she could see, if your website's like this, of course you're not going to get people to convert. It's too complicated. I'll do it like that. Another great example is Anna Korlath. She works she's the founder of The Good Illustrator. And each week she knocks up a branding toolkit for a sustainability topic and then shares the thinking and the process via LinkedIn. And look, the topics she's covered, things like soil or seaweed. It's kind of fun, but it's also a great vehicle to show and not tell what she does. And because it's got that sort of interesting kind of humorous element to it, people talk about it and people share it. So my question to you is, what could you build or show that is aligned or adjacent to the problem that you want to solve? Okay, telling your story. If you don't shape your story, someone else will. Or worse, they'll forget it. So you need to make it ridiculously easy to understand what you do now and what you're looking for. The easiest place to start with this is your LinkedIn headline. And you can frame that with, I help X do Y for Z. That's it. It's a one-liner that makes sense to the outside world, outside of your previous industry. Again, so that anybody can understand it. I help mid-career professionals find their working climate to make their impact. Now you know what I do. So you need to find the same version or a version of that for you. And what makes this very powerful is that it's about owning the future version of yourself too, which if you have imposter syndrome issues, which 70% of people do, you get to rehearse and practice. You get to tell your new story out loud. You get to test it in conversations and refine what lands and see how it feels to tell someone that I am a sustainability consultant focusing on the built environment, for example. There is a whole guide to how to do this in the resource pack for homework. I'm not going to belabor this anymore, but these three things, the proof projects and the tell your story, are really important because with the shape what you've got, and this is the how do you translate your skills, it builds this picture, this findability, your credibility when you are positioning yourself to others. So shape what you have. We often undersell ourselves because the translation between our past experience and our next step suffers from a framing and language problem. What time is it? Shall we do this now? Yeah. Okay. So there's two parts to this. One of the problems is that the language that we use currently is rarely the language that is in use where we want to go. So sales isn't sales in sustainability, it's partnership development. And marketing isn't marketing, it's communications and relations. Systems thinking, it works both ways, actually. And this is part of the problem. It's changing all the time. With the recent changes and the sort of ESG backlash, systems thinking is now more often loosely described as strategic supply. Anyway, so the point is trying to find these particular terms. Now is the time to take from the job board and drop it into ChatGPT and say, give me the 10 skills which are most commonly referred to in this. Now give me synonyms of those 10 skills and look at whether there is a match to anything that you currently have in your CV. And then you can start to use that. So that's the first step around understanding the language in use. The second part is this short exercise. We have to be able to translate your experience into the outcomes that they care about, not the ones you're proudest of, not the ones that showcase your technical depth, the ones that match their pain. And here's how. So this is a pens and paper exercise. And Daria, is it Daria or Dasha? I've worked with people who go
At
by both.
both.
Okay, all right, okay. Dasha, you are currently top left on my screen. So the important thing is learning to pick the right experience. We'll come to that a little bit later. But in this particular exercise, pick any example from your CV or LinkedIn of anything that you've done, any project that you've done, any work experience that comes to mind. And yes, it can be something that you're proud of, because we're just going to learn the process of building this value ladder for how to describe it. Okay, so start with the problem. 2 minutes. I want you to think of a particular work experience which is currently on your CV or LinkedIn. And I want you to frame that experience around the challenge, not what was difficult for you, but why you were doing it. So that might be the company was bleeding customers due to clunky onboarding. What is the problem from the organizational perspective? And we're going to do that and take 2 minutes. And when we do that, I'm going to sit back down. Okay. So, from the perspective of the company, the organization, we've described the problem. The next bit is to describe your intervention. Now, this is to make it strategic, not tasky, not I did these million things. No one cares that it was a cross functional team collaboration because they're just pointless words that you could throw into anything. What is the thing that made the difference? And we've got 2 minutes. Off we go. Okay. You finish your thoughts, finish your sentence. This is called forced brevity. It means that we tap into the first and most obvious set of answers. And like I say, it's a starter for doing this more fully and in more in depth using the guides which will be in the resource pack. The next part is finish with the result. And then we're going to go one step further, but finish with the result. What was the checking I'm not on mute, not on mute. 10 points, Andy. What was the result of the problem being solved beyond just the bottom line impact? Why was it important at the time in the context of the organization's journey or strategic goals? So, in the example that we're walking through, we talked about this. We were losing consumers. So the user retention jumped, blah, blah, blah. But the important bit is that it was a 20% uplift in the recurring revenue and a greater investor confidence ahead of Series B. And that is the phrase that pays, because what you're doing is you are demonstrating you understand the importance of what you did from the organizational context. You are talking directly to the problem that your hiring person is facing, because they don't care about how you did it particularly. What they want to know is that you can help them with investor confidence if you're talking to early stage founder. It's worth saying at this point, this is hard. And you shouldn't expect to nail it with 3 questions in 10 minutes. But use this process and think about it and refine it and test and learn. So I'm going to give 2 minutes just to try and figure this through. Okay. As you start to finish that, to elevate this to an award-winning version of describing your past experience, add in what you learned. Now, this is the clever bit. This is the bit where you can make the bridge from your experience to a new sector. Because if you use that opening line, I think what stood out for me from this experience was the importance of, and then bluntly, name a skill that is on the job description, and then explain why. So you're taking the clue from the job description or from an informational conversation that you've previously had, because it's likely if you were following this process, your future contribution will not come through an application. But you're able to then say, you know what, I realized it was really important that, and then you can go further with a because it enabled ... So I'm going to give you, yeah, let's do it. It's 2 minutes. Again, I know this is not easy. Okay. Question in the comments. How do I know what the problem is? What are they worried about? That is the homework. In a 10-minute standing start from this point, it is only the beginning. I guess what I would like to reiterate here is that your opinion does not matter. So you need to research the problems that your hiring archetype experiences. If it is likely that when you found your niche, you recognize that the person most likely to have the P&L or the budget, or most likely to get fired if this goes wrong, is the person that ultimately will be making the decision. So you can research, what does the head of UX lie awake thinking about? You can understand where your target organizations are in their funding cycle and the archetypal problems that early stage founders will be experiencing. You can think about, if you're going into a large consultancy, then the head of your group or team leads are more likely to be worried about client facing issues. And so you can talk to the importance of client relationships being top of mind in all of the work that you do. You can basically do the research to find that archetype and to learn and to focus. And if you can't figure it out, which you shouldn't, go and ask some. Doesn't necessarily have to be someone who is in your space. Doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's hiring right now. But if you are thinking about moving into something like UX or to consultancy, go speak to anybody, not necessarily in climate and sustainability, about the type of problems that they are thinking about. And ideally, pick someone 2 steps above where you're currently positioning yourself, because it's likely that the person who's making the decision as to hiring you or not will have to advocate your position to their next step, their next level. And that is the person whose problem you need to talk to. Okay. Part of the resource pack, I've included a guide to this, including those ChatGPT prompts about how to translate from a set of keywords into something that you might recognize. This is all well and good, but only if you are found and seen. So the next bit we need to talk about is visibility, because this is where most mid-career professionals, especially those coming from traditional corporate backgrounds, quietly sabotage themselves, because you're probably used to being brilliant behind the scenes. You solve problems, you deliver, but you're not used to telling people about it. And in climate and sustainability, a lot of the opportunities are informal. You get referred, you get recommended, you get invited in. But here's the catch: you can't be referred if people can't remember what you do. And worse still, if you're not showing up online as your new job title, or indeed not at all, then you're really making it difficult for people to be able to find you. Visibility isn't about being loud or personal branding in a cringy kind of way. It's about clearly signaling your value consistently, about becoming who you are. So, the people who build traction are the ones who make it easy. Easy to say things like, you know who you should speak to about that? Rebecca. Because Rebecca has been writing about this and I saw it online recently. She really understands the problem. Maybe you guys should chat. This isn't easy. So in the chat, give me one word impression of how you feel about posting online or on LinkedIn. One word. Go. I'm just seeing now some interesting questions. Time consuming. Okay. Fake. True. Dread. Yes, Heather. That is very common. Risk. Yeah. So, Vinyak, that's a really interesting one. To the current job, maybe. I'm just going to take a quick sidebar and answer that specifically. It can be a risk if you're posting publicly on LinkedIn, but there are so many niche sites and subreddit forums, and Work and Climate has got lots and lots of different working groups. And you go and join those communities because they are the people that you want to be connecting to as well. Okay. Ultimately, nobody likes doing this. You'd have to be a psychopath to be someone who wants to just constantly talk about yourself and what you've done. 90% of my clients hate this because we suffer from the spotlight effect, which is this feeling that everybody is watching you. And we have imposter syndrome, which says what I've got to say doesn't feel valuable. But we don't need to feel like this. And here is how. Firstly, you think about where to spend your time and your effort on building visibility. If you're new to this, do not let overwhelm defeat you. Just be incremental. First port of call is your LinkedIn profile. It is your professional shop window. Before anyone speaks to you or Googles you or refers you, most likely they will always check your profile. And so will recruiters and hiring managers and decision makers, those who have the keys to your next steps. There is so much advice on LinkedIn profiles. I'm not going to waste our time or patronize you further. You know how to use Google. There's lots of guides. Rather, I have my own 9-step guide that I'll make available in the resource pack. So each step has an estimated time to complete. So take it step by step, keep it simple, keep it focused. Secondly, your communities. These are the rooms you show up in, even if it's just to listen. Obviously, Work and Climate is a great place to start, but there are more niche opportunities to get involved in more specific areas. So join 2 or 3 high signal communities, check out the So You Want to Work in Climate as a resource index for these. There's about 600 different resources, and again, it's all in the resource pack that's coming to you. And then third is your conversations. The most underrated visibility move is probably commenting on someone else's post with insight or encouragement or simply a good question. You don't need to overthink this, just join the conversation. A thoughtful comment is often worth more than a polished post. And I know a lot of people find this hard, so you can think of online engagement as climbing a ladder. Without an expert point of view, and with the tyranny of imposter syndrome, you can feel terrified of engaging in the first place. But again, use this ladder of incrementalism to engage. The listen and learn is an obvious first step, but build your feeds intentionally. Take 5 minutes a day to edit the magazine of educators delivering stuff to your feed on LinkedIn. Unfollow all the people that have no interest or from your old industry, and pick the 5 to 10 thought leaders in your space and make sure that you get to see their content whenever you're there. Don't scroll through everyone's, don't go to the homepage and start scrolling. It is a horrible waste of time. Pick the 10. And in the resource pack, there's a little shortcut you can use to have a one button press, just see content from these 10 people. Join those conversations. No audience yourself, no problem. Borrow the audience of those thought leaders in this space. Find, follow, and comment on their stuff. Again, you don't have to be delivering the answer. Ask smart questions. Your future colleagues, collaborators, or co-founders will be in those conversations in the comments too. Then you can leverage your value as an information node. You can bring all this information together and repost it. You don't just regurgitate it, but you can compile and summarize it. And to be clear, your perfect audience is you 2 weeks ago. Imagine sitting where you are now and having someone who is able to give you a clear, concise summary of a topic that you're researching. Someone who is speaking in your voice directly to you. And so offer that as the gift to people who are a month or 2 months behind you in your learning journey. And as you go up your ladder of knowledge, then the number of people you are helping will increase. And you can use the fact that good writing requires good thinking. To be able to start putting these sort of things together will really help you understand and get to grips with the problem that you're wanting to solve. Okay, so once you're showing up clearly and consistently, the final question is, who is actually seeing you? Visibility without connection can still leave you feeling stuck. The real momentum comes when people don't just see your work, but they start talking about it, sharing it, and inviting you in. And that's when your network starts to do the heavy lifting. The focus is on connections and the network, not more time on job boards. But you know that already. Okay, the question as ever is, how do we use our time effectively? Time is the most important resource we have, so we need to use it wisely. Networking isn't small talk at conferences or swapping business cards hoping something good will come of it. Networking has to have a return on networking investment. So the question is, who should you actually speak to? And because I'm a former management consultant, I always like a model and a diagram. So I've gone with the concentric rings of network investment. So the high return relationships in the middle, these are the people inside your target organizations, the mid-level staff, the cross-functional collaborators, not just HR. These connections can give you the inside info, the referrals, the easy early intelligence on upcoming roles. They are your warmest path to follow. Now, to be clear, I don't necessarily mean go and start hassling and connecting with these people. Find them, follow their information, follow their posts, comment on their stuff. And over time, you have enough curiosity and initiative. You don't have to pitch a connection because you are engaging in what they are doing first. After the high return relationships, there's the momentum builders, the subject matter experts, and thought leaders in your space. People talking about the problems you care about. Here is the open forum to engage and learn and contribute to their conversations, taking advantage of their audience effect. And then on the outside, the smallest amount of time, is the energy and insight boosters. They're kind of the people you already know. So reconnect with light updates. Many people are here and want to help. But in this group, there is also career switchers. So you can find people who are in your ideal space, who were in your current space. There's a guide in the resource pack to use LinkedIn filters to say, find me people who are working in these 10 companies who have come from any of these 10 companies. And then you can say, okay, well, this person has come from what I was doing. These people are gold because they know the messy middle. They know what you're going through, and they will almost certainly be able to help you and want to talk to you. This is especially true in the climate and sustainability space. We only win when we all win. And that open door element of trying to help people is evidenced by the existence of Open Door Climate. Open Door Climate is a great resource. There's about 5,000 professionals who have explicitly said, I will help people who want to do what I do because I know that not enough people are doing it. So set up by Daniel Hill. It's a hashtag on LinkedIn and a website with a, what's it called? A list, an inventory, a searchable list. It's a G sheet. You can find people in the sector you want to go to and they are willing to speak to you. Okay. Let's just reframe networking, because for a lot of people, that word brings up images of this small talk and this cringy, horrible self-promotion. But in a climate career where jobs are often created and not posted, your ability to connect matters more than your CV. So I want to offer you a final invitation, and it's a different way to think about it. Think of networking as the 3 C's. There is curiosity, connection, and consistency. You do not have to be the expert. I keep going back to this because it's what stops most people doing the right thing. Asking a smart question is far more valuable than pretending to have the answers. People remember genuine curiosity. It builds trust, it shows vulnerability, and it opens doors without pressure. Secondly, think of yourself as the connector, not just the seeker. You have more value to offer than you might think, even if you're early in your transition. You can connect people together, but maybe it's a podcast or a link or simply saying you should meet so and so. And the third point is this is about consistency. It is a long game, and it means that treating it like a project and not like a panic button. Track who you speak to, know what you've learned. Use a CRM or a simple spreadsheet. You'll find one in the resource pack, again, just to help you keep track of what's going on and who you're speaking to. Okay, big breath. The reason why this approach wins, it gives you, and I mean this whole approach, filter, funnel, focus, and then this credible visibility combined with networking, that arc is how you will break into this space, help you find your niche and make your contribution. It gives you a clear and actionable plan so you maintain momentum. It builds your confidence and is essential, remember, because 2/3 of jobs come from your soft network. It enables you to show and not tell via the proof trail that you're leaving. And critically, it helps you craft your narrative, refine your positioning to uniquely solve the problems of your future colleagues, collaborators, or clients. None of this is easy, but this is the most important place to start. Spending time on your resume, again, worrying about your cover letter, they're all distractions compared to the fundamental importance of being able to confidently articulate the problem you are trying to solve, who you solve it for, and how you solve it. I've said at the start that what matters now isn't that you've listened to this, it's what you do next that matters. And that's why I've put this resource pack together. And in the resource pack, you've got all of these things. The Work on Climate group, awesome. And they'll be sharing a recording of this conversation with all the links to all of the following on the screen right now. One note is that the guides will come out as an email sequence. So you don't just get a whole bunch of stuff in one go. You sign up and get the conversations and networking guide. And a few days later, I'll send out the next few bits. But if you're serious about making this transition and curious about what it would be like to do that in a concerted and structured and supported manner, then I've pulled most of this content from a masterclass course, which is a 6-week sprint to help professionals like you move into meaningful work. This is about to be a shameless plug, because if you want to make a difference, then I want to help. I am in this ultimately because I want to be able to answer my children's questions when they ask me what I was doing when the world was on fire and everyone was ignoring it. And my answer is this: I help people like you find their niche and make their impact. So on screen is a link to the program. We start on the 4th of June. Works in your time zone. And it's 6 live sessions followed by a resource hub, cohorts of typically 5 to 10 people. And if you have any questions about what it would be like that aren't answered on the course page, then let me know. Thank you, Felix. Just dropped that link in the chat. We have 7 minutes for questions. And as part of wrapping up today, the Work on Climate and myself, the reason why we do this is to support you. And we can only do that when we know what support you need. So it is in both our interests, for you and for us, to leave us some feedback. And if you don't want to do it for me, boohoo, or Felix and crew, boohoo, do it for you as a legacy move. You will be helping the people who come after you. We only win when we all win together. So feedback is really important. Okay, does anybody have some questions? Have I missed any in the? I did actually. I know someone was saying, "What about if you don't know what the problem was?" Rebecca. So if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Meanwhile, Rebecca Chandler, how would you change this if you're trying to transition to a slightly different type of role company where the desired impacts and outcomes of the role would be different, even though you'd use the same transferable skill to achieve the new different impact? Rebecca, yes. Do you want to come off mute and just give me a bit more context about what you mean by, do you mean you're trying to go somewhere that you haven't got the experience from? Tell me.
Yes, in a way. I suppose so one thing is, my roles, I sort of went through several roles in banking, so in the same bank, and they were all quite generalist roles. So I kind of, had a lot of skills, so a bit of sales, marketing, project management, commercial, client relationship management, lots of transferable skills. But whenever, because I've done quite a lot of this work on, creating these stories about, a problem you solved, how you did it, the impact, the learning. But most of those stories, the end impact is not something that, I would be looking to do in the types of roles I'm trying to get into. Because in my past firm, I was always trying to move into climate sustainable finance type roles, but because I was very competent at my existing job, they just kept piling more and more work on me that was, not what I wanted to be doing, but I had to do it. So yeah, a lot of my experience is sort of in things that I don't want to keep doing, even though the skills I was using are very transferable to the types of roles I do want to do. So it's a little bit hard, when you say, and I think it's true that, a lot of companies, they're not just looking for a list of skills, even though that's what they might list on a job description. They're looking for people who can solve problems. But I'm trying to move into jobs where the problems are quite different from what I was working on, but I can use my skills to, I know I can solve the problems. I just haven't done it before because I wasn't in the type of job that I wanted to be in, if that makes sense.
Got it. So what problem do you want to solve?
So I am trying to transition into sustainable investing roles. So helping to channel more capital towards sustainable businesses, companies solving, climate problems.
But what problem does the company that's doing that, what problem do they have? So I get the sort of the big picture. You want to increase the amount of money that's going into sustainability. If, for example, if you're talking to a PE fund that's sitting on the capital ready to invest, what is the problem that they need solving? Is it something like they need help with their due diligence to pick the projects? Is it their help that raising capital in order to make these investments? What is the organizational problem do you want to solve?
Well, probably both. I think I'd probably mainly be looking at,
If you had to pick one.
more on the helping the company. I prefer more client-facing roles rather than analytical roles, although I do both. So I more on the helping the firm, the investment funds market itself to the limited partners, helping them market themselves to the companies they want to invest in, so that they get into the funding round. That sort of helping to explain the value proposition of the firm.
All right. And then who gets fired if you're not good at doing that? If I was the person that you'd come and work for,
Mhm.
all right, maybe rephrase that. So there's two sides of the same question. What I'm trying to get to is like, who are you speaking to? Who is going to say, yes, please, Rebecca, come and join us? Are they the fund manager? Are they the due diligence lead? Are they small enough to be speaking to the founder? Like, who is the archetype whose problem you can describe?
Mm, mm, would probably be quite different. I mean, again, 'cause my background is in large companies, but
But
you
what
know,
do you want to do next? This is so like this kind of like research process, right? Because
but
what
like, I
you're
would prefer to work on the smaller end, but most of my experience is in the larger end, and my experience has been that, you know, small companies won't hire you unless you have experience in small companies. Large companies want to see experience in large companies. So again, my experience is not necessarily aligned with what I would ideally want to be doing. So I'm probably looking at sort of several career steps to get closer to where I want to
yeah
be incrementally.
that's another great way of doing this. Listen, I'm happy to talk about this more offline. It sounds like there is a bit more work to do in being able to concisely describe the problem you solve for your target organization and who in that organization you need to speak to. So putting aside the experience bit, like well, how do I make this translate? The clarity around being able to describe in the small organization language, like we struggle with this, and you being able to say, I know you struggle with this, and talk to a particular, like really visually clear as to the archetype of the person who will give you this opportunity. That is the step that then makes it a lot easier to translate, not necessarily the achievements, but I've solved similar things in this circumstance because, and then you go back again to explaining the problem. We are out of time. Felix and Nicolette, is there anything that we would like to add as we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we are good. Yeah, we have a couple of questions left in the chat. Maybe they can reach out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just find me on LinkedIn and hit me up with any other questions. I'm here to help. Okay. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for your patience and understanding and your willingness to do some hand wobbling stretches in the middle. It's very important to stay energized. And I invite you to check out what I do on LinkedIn. I post nearly every day, basically with you guys in mind to try and help. And if you have questions, then just ping me on there and I will come back to you with a bit more time and consideration. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. I'm going to sign off. If I can find buried under the 15 different windows I've got open the exit button, I shall do so.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Andy, for the wonderful session today and last week. And yeah, thank you.